Hey, boy. Mm-hmm. We're going straight in. Yeah, we need it. Welcome to Until It's Gone. Roll the intro. So here's a question. When you're describing more air conditioning, do you say, what do you say, turn the air down or turn the air up? Because when you're talking about air, you're usually talking about the air conditioning. You gotta say it in the mic. Everyone ponder while Nate finishes pouring coffee. Sponsored by Quickwater. Actually, we are. Psych. I'm kidding. Love you, Steven. Thanks for coffee this morning. It's an Ethiopian.
I'm so excited. I need it.
Need it. SpongeBob reference for all you
so good
folks.
Thank you, Steven.
Yeah,
we're back. Thank you, y'all, for your patience on our little sabbatical. I got a little talking to by Aaron again.
We called it.
Yeah, he's like, so are you on a sabbatical or what's going on here? He's like,
we got fired.
I was like, yeah, we're working on it. So we're back in business, boys.
And ladies.
Boys and ladies. Badies. And we should be back on schedule for the rest of this year. But yeah, I was out of town, and it just seems like this happens once or twice a year. At least last year happened once. So
about the same time.
Yeah, it seems natural. Maybe we should plan that.
Like a beginning
month off
of summer break. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways,
we could do that.
Cole is asking a very important question.
Yeah. This is need to know.
I was going to say, I try to be as accurate with my speech as I can be. I try.
Doesn't always happen.
Amanda's laughing right now.
Doesn't always happen.
I say turn the air up and the temperature down. Yeah.
Because that's what you're doing by turning the air up, is you're decreasing the temperature.
Yeah. Thinking of like a fan, like turn the fan down.
And I was thinking about this when you say turn the heat up because you want it hotter.
It works for both.
Exactly. You say the same thing because the desired result is the same.
It almost is. We're going to get really deep into this. It's almost still more accurate to say, can you turn the temperature up or turn the heat up? Because it's like, when you turn the heat up, I almost think about like high or low. Like turn the fan high or low.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep.
And then when I think about turning the temperature up, it's like set it higher, but it might not kick in right away, whatever.
Yes. Yeah. On the thermostat, set it higher.
But that's just common courtesy.
Welcome to our philosophical debate on... We went to school, guys.
No, we didn't. I guess I did.
Not for this.
Not for this at all.
We didn't go for HVAC.
Yeah. So, we just kind of were really busy. And then I was gone on the day we were supposed to record. I was in Montana with Amanda, visiting some friends and vacationing. Maybe better to say traveling, which was awesome.
What? Explain to me your flight voucher situation. Guys, I meant to ask you about that.
Yeah.
I didn't understand everything.
So basically, sometimes the airline overbooks a flight and they offer cash for people to change the travel plans. They're like, if you have flexible travel plans and want to take the 3 p.m. flight to this, destination, then
we'll pay you.
Yeah. And Amanda and I, on our first flight, we were flying out of Chicago. We were listening to a different flight, and they were like $800 to 2 people who want to do this. And we're like, this isn't our flight. We're just like, oh, like would we do that? And we're like, no, we have a connection flight we have to hit. So like, whatever. They're like 1,000, 1,200, 1,500. And then like, I don't know if they must have had someone volunteer after 1,500 or something.
Yeah. It's like an auction.
Yeah. We got on our flight, went to Salt Lake City, and then went to get on our plane, and they said the same thing. And this was this was a Monday. We didn't really have plans until technically our first like hiking plans were like Wednesday. Tuesday, we were going to like go shopping and stuff. Actually, we're going to maybe do that Monday. So maybe we could have had an extra like day of relaxing in there, but there wasn't like any real plans until Wednesday.
No.
Maddie and Michael, who we were meeting, were flying in Tuesday afternoon, bringing the rental car, which we were going to use to get anywhere anyways. Everywhere anyways.
Yeah.
So they were like, we need 2 volunteers to fly into Great Falls, which was 3 hours away from where we were initially going to fly into, for $2,000 each. We're like, we'll figure it out. Well, that sounds good. So we did that. Learned when we were there was one lady who they needed 4 people for the flight. 2 of them were flying into Kalispell, which is where we were going to be flying into, only like 3 hours later.
Oh,
the same airport, like just 3 hours later for the same amount.
Wow.
But when we went to talk about Great Falls, one person already took the Kalispell flight. So there was only 1 seat open to get back into Kalispell. So we're like, all right, so me and Amanda are together. So we're like, we'll just fly into Great Falls, get a rental car, whatever, get into town. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It will probably still be up money, like figuring that out.
I was going to say, yeah.
No rental cars were available. An Uber was like $900.
Oh, gosh.
People that were going to pick us up weren't able to like, we're like, we'll pay you. They're like, we can't like make it happen. So we're like, okay, shoot. So right now we're like flying into Great Falls. Our flight already left for Kalispell, right? Like at this point,
it's committed.
We're sitting in Salt Lake City Airport.
Yeah.
And then we're like, we spend probably 3 hours like just stressing about this, trying to figure this out. Like, oh, what if we rented a car from this place and drove from here, and then this person picked us back up, and then we did, all these things. We went back to the Delta help desk and we're like, hey, we got, we volunteered to switch our flight plans, but we were flying into Great Falls. Is there any way we could get into Kalispell like today or tomorrow? Slash Missoula, which was where Maddie and Michael were flying into the next day.
Gotcha.
And they were like, oh yeah, we could get you to either of those by tonight. We're like, okay.
Sick.
So Kalispell, please.
Yeah.
Which that flight left at 10:30 p.m.
Oh man.
And our other flight was supposed to leave into Kalispell at 11 a.m.
From Salt Lake.
From Salt Lake City.
What was that, like a 2-hour flight or less than that?
From Salt Lake.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So we got up to go to the airport in Chicago at 3:30 a.m. We got to our hotel in Kalispell at 3 a.m. So it was a long day.
Yeah. Was that over 24 hours of travel?
Yeah, because it was about 24 hours because of the time change.
Yes, yeah.
Because there was another hour of time change in there. So we were exhausted, but I guess it was worth it still.
You're up like $4,000, $3,000 or something?
Yeah. We spent like $350 on our hotel that night because it was like really nice hotel that was like walking distance from the airport. Yeah. Because there was no Ubers at 2 a.m. in Montana.
Right. It's business expense from what you just did.
So, so it's,
that's crazy.
Yeah. So that happened. And then on the way home, everything was smooth sailing, no overbooking. And we actually got they moved our seats, I think on both flights on the way home to be like the emergency exit ones. So we had like good leg room. So that was nice.
Amazing.
Yeah. So the Lord took care of us, but it was pretty stressful for like 3 hours.
You almost like made your money back on the tickets.
It paid for our trip.
Yeah. That's sick.
Yeah. Paid for our trip, which
is
crazy.
They're basically, it's an inconvenience, but they're also kind of paying you for your time to just like sit around. The inconvenience, and move.
We were like, and then you always like get like, oh man, if only. But like, imagine if we just had to wait 3 hours in the airport, leave at the 3 p.m. flight.
Yeah.
4 hours, I guess. Or
and then someone would have been able to pick you up or something. Yeah,
exactly. Same airport, be there on time, not have to buy a hotel. That would have been nuts.
Oh, that would have been insane.
But
instant profit.
The Lord is still good. So
yeah.
That was crazy. And then we went hiking and all that good stuff in Glacier National Park, which was, Amanda said this on our first hike. She's like, I don't think I've seen anything more pretty than this. And I realized, like, you know what? I think you're right.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, having that moment and realizing
that's cool.
It was insane.
Super tranquil.
Yeah.
Shot a bunch of film.
Yeah. Cole let me borrow one of his film cameras, and I used 3 rolls, and I couldn't get it. I tried to buy more, and Walmart was out.
So. Did you take them into Mark's yet?
Not yet.
I have like 5 rolls sitting at home. It's gonna be like $100.
I know.
For develop and scan.
Yeah. I wonder, CVS develops too.
I wouldn't.
You don't think so?
No. I mean, there's a difference. Like, you can develop, but their scanner is not gonna be anything to write home about.
Yeah. I would rather go to Mark's anyways because it's like local.
Yeah. But there's a couple places. There's a place called the Dark Room, which I think is in California, that you mail them and they like pay for shipping, but then you mail them, and their stuff is like really, really nice in terms of
You were thinking about that, weren't you?
Yeah. I still might look into that because I actually shot a roll. This is super nerdy camera things, but I shot a roll that was pushed one stop, so everything was like overexposed unintentionally. Because sometimes you can do that purposefully, but I didn't do that, and Mark's won't push. It's on Portra 400, and they just won't push that film stock one stop. So I do actually have to send it to the dark room if I want to get it developed properly. Otherwise, if I get it developed, everything's going to be really underexposed. So there's a whole like science to chemistry of developing film when you push it or pull it a stop or two. So
interesting. We'll have to talk more about that later.
Yeah. Film things.
Speaking of anxiety.
Yeah. It's a kind of a good segue. Your story.
Yeah.
Your trip story.
Yeah. How are you, man?
Good. I have been I've been fairly busy, but things have like slowed down this week, and for the foreseeable future, kind of just on the basis of I have shot a bunch of stuff, and now it's kind of like edit mode. And last week I literally had nothing on my calendar, so I could actually like finalize some other projects so that I can now like make time for these other ones. And I don't really have any big pressing projects coming up. And I'm still wrapping up a few more, and mainly wrapping up projects to get to these wedding edits that I have, these videos. And so I have a couple in the bank that I'm sitting on, and then I just shot Josiah and Lacey's wedding. Shout out to Josiah and Lacey. And it was a gorgeous wedding up in Kingsley, which is like 25 minutes southeast-ish of Traverse. Gorgeous.
Yeah, it's pretty
absolutely gorgeous. And 2 weeks before that,
there's disc golf in Kingsley. I'm pretty sure that's the only reason I know of it.
Yeah. 2 weeks before their wedding, I shot Kirk's brother, shot his wedding, and that was in Frankfurt. So I've had 2 weddings, and Frankfurt is like basically a straight shot west from Kingsley. About an hour. It's just south of Sleeping Bear.
And some car troubles.
Some car troubles. And it was like my worst fears like materialized because Lanza's wedding, Kirk's brother, his wedding was on a Saturday. It was at the ceremony, I think was going to be at 3 or 4 p.m. Really cool. It was on the dunes. They own a strip of land on Lake Michigan, and it was on the piece of land right at the top of the dune. And so you could just overlook Lake Michigan. Like, it was absolutely unreal. Super cool. But it wasn't like a super normal full day wedding shoot. So we could just show up at the ceremony and be set and shoot that, and then kind of the rest of the evening and golden hour pics. And then that was kind of it. But with that being said, I needed to be up there that day. And I left at like a normal time. I think I actually, what time did I leave? I might have left around like noon 30 or 1 or something, and got halfway there. It's about a 2-hour drive, and I got basically halfway there. I got to Reed City, and all of a sudden on the highway, like I was cruising, literally just doing like 75 on cruise. Nothing was the matter. And then all of a sudden, basically my whole dash becomes a Christmas tree and lights up. My check engine light is flashing, and come to find out, like, these certain issues for Subarus and like a lot of cars, a lot of things will start flashing at you. Like your cruise kicks off, starts flashing, your traction control starts flashing, check engine light is flashing, which is like big no. Like if your check engine light comes on, that's different than your check engine light flashing at you. Flashing is like immediate, like turn the car off. So I like pulled over, and it started shaking like really bad, and I lost all like acceleration. And so I pulled over to the side of the road, and my heart is just like beating so fast. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to be here at a certain time for this wedding, like of all shoots, like it's a wedding shoot, and like I have to be there. And I like didn't know what I was going to do. And like the Lord was in that moment, and it was almost like he was bringing things to mind to do, and just like helping me figure it out without me really even being super like keenly aware. Like I'm just trying to figure out everything, and, you know, saying like the hurried, like quick prayers, like, Lord, like help me figure this out, you know, under your breath as your like mind is racing kind of into sorting it out for yourself. And so luckily I did have a second shooter, and shout out to Caleb, who's the MVP. He lives in Zealand-ish area, and he left about the same time I did. And so he was driving up the coast.
So he swung out.
So he was basically in Ludington when I was in Reed City, and a straight, flat, horizontal shot east from each other. East and west from each other. And so I immediately texted him, because I was like, okay, like I can just leave the car. I can deal with it later. Let me just go shoot and like serve Lons and his beautiful bride, and then I'll figure my car stuff out and kind of leave that by the wayside. And so I texted him, and he immediately shot over, and we made it up in time, and with a couple minutes to spare actually, which is really amazing. And then my mom was also a super champ, because she came up. I got off the highway eventually. Like first I pulled off on the side of the road on the highway, and then the Reed City exit ramp was very, very close, and I was like seeing the sign. And so I was like, I bet I could just make it to that and like get off the highway and into a parking lot or something. So I pulled into a McDonald's parking lot and called my mom, called dad, called AAA, called Caleb, like all within the span of like 10 minutes, and like sorted it out. Caleb came and picked me up, and we made it. And then mom came up and dealt with my car, because the thought was I was actually going to stay at the property in Lons's camper, which I did, and it was amazing. But I stayed there the wedding night, so I didn't end up driving back at like 10 p.m. Like I could have done it, but I was like, after shooting and driving, and you're just kind of gassed and you just want to rest. And they offered, and I was like, that's perfect. So I was planning on staying there, which is fine. But then I was like, got to figure out how to get home, because I won't have a car there, because Caleb basically dropped me off, and then Caleb didn't need to stay. So I was there and shot the rest of the day, which that in and of itself is the Lord giving me like mental peace to just like not be bogged down by thinking about it constantly, which was amazing. But mom came up, called AAA, and like sat with the car for like 5 hours while they figured out getting a tow truck over to the car to like pick it up, because AAA is great and we have free towing, but that free means that they get like bottom of the barrel like tow services that like don't want to do it, or are like understaffed, or just like really far away. So it's like that was like a whole fiasco in itself. So got the car back and like brought it to my mechanic guy, and we got it kind of sorted out. It was a misfire. It threw 2 misfire codes in cylinder 1 and cylinder 3, and we have like no idea why. Like there was no telltale signs, and it could be, I've done spark plugs. I have 140K miles done spark plugs. So it's basically either like air or fuel. And so, or I have a coil pack that's going bad or something, but there's so many variables that could like cause a misfire. So it's really hard to pinpoint unless there's something blaringly like obvious with it. So I'm like just doing what I can at this point.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like where this comes back to anxiety is sense that it's died down a lot through some prayer and just letting the Lord turn it over in my mind. Because so Lanz's wedding, that was 2 weeks, and then Josiah and Lacey's was this past weekend, and so it was another drive. Like it was another 2-hour drive. And
were you like nervous about it driving?
Oh yeah, I was almost like
flashbacks,
white knuckling it for no reason up there, because I was just like tense and like tight, because literally like I said, like it came so out of the blue. It's like at any second my whole day could just be totally flipped. And actually I kind of gave myself a cushion because I got there a day early for Josiah and Lacey's wedding, because they got me a camper on the property so I could just wake up and like be there and get like drone shots and stuff of the morning. And they wanted to do private vows that day, the day before. So I had like a little bit of a cushion in there. If something did happen, I still left super early. But yeah, and so even just like driving it like around town, it's like, what if I'm on my way to like a shoot and something happens? And that's kind of what I've taken away from a lot of it, is like that could happen at any moment, like at any time. And the check engine flashing is more so just like a metaphor to everything else that can like come at us in life, of like a health diagnosis or like a car accident, or, you know, like something that is awful and like tragic that can all of a sudden just happen. And living with that and not living in fear of that, but living in the tension of that, as well as relinquishing control. Because as humans, when the way that we cope with fear is, and really like, we'll unpack this more, I'm sure, but behind anxiety is really fear. And the way that we cope with that and deal with that is want to control everything. And that's what this has like really shown me. And not to say that we shouldn't do what we can. Like I'm still trying to diagnose the misfire. I did do some things to my car. Not saying that we should just completely throw our hands up and like, Jesus, take the wheel type of deal, but like still do our part and what we can to like mitigate that, but not let that act consume you. And also still living in faith and living in control, or living in relinquishing control, big control to the Father, and like resting in that. And so it's kind of like I was even talking to one of my buddies. We had a shoot a couple weeks ago, and his pregnant wife with 5 kids at home got into a car accident, and he wasn't home. He was out in another state for a week-long shoot, and that happened in like the middle of the week. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like,
did he like fly home? Like how bad was
he
the
like
accident?
finished out the week. She's okay, thankfully. As far as I've heard, everything's okay. But like it made my problem seem instantly so small, and here I am like being stressed out about this and the other thing, which like rightfully so, I guess, but and not to play the comparison game, but it's anything like that. Like, again, like using my situation as more of a metaphor to bigger things, smaller things that just can send you into a frenzy.
I think like, obviously like there are bigger things than like your car breaking down, but like we get so used to everything just being smooth and going right and not being inconvenienced, that when it does come up, that it's like, oh shoot, like this wasn't part of my plan. And then anything can really play that role. You know, if it's major or minor, if it wasn't a part of your plan, it was never a part of your plan. And that same response almost happens.
Yes. Yeah.
it's interesting to me, like, to think about that slow burn of anxiety of like a little bit haunting. Like, oh, I'm just like going to be driving my car around and now it's like in the back of my mind, like
yes,
something similar. I've held that a little bit with the van, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
The van even a little more unreliable in some sense.
Yeah.
It starts kind of sketchy sometimes. It's never not started. But in the back of your head, you're like, one of these times, man, I'm going to be like, just not expecting it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that is where the peace comes into play. Because like you said, literally anything in life can play that role. And I think fear is something that can be debilitating. But it's something that you can like conquer as well. And it's something that you can still be afraid and have a healthy fear. Like, again, like you should probably always be a little bit like conscious of the fact that things could go wrong and like have a contingency plans and stuff like that. But letting that consume you is where that comes into play. I saw a video of a guy who he lives in the mountains, and he lives right next to like a river that a lot of the snow melt from the mountains comes into. And he started to bathe in it every morning, just like submerge himself in the river every morning. He's like, and I'm really afraid of it. He's like, that's why I do it every morning. He's like, it's like 47 degrees, just like ice cold water. And he's like, I don't want to do this, but this is day one. And he's like, I'm just going to do it. And then, you know, he's like, after you do it, you realize that like you can kind of grab your fear and conquer it in a sense. Right. And I think honestly, it's a little bit of a biblical motif as well. It's like, there's really no place in the scripture that validates fear, which is a really interesting, like very, it sounds like, I don't know, not PC or whatever. Like people, you know, everyone wants to be validated about like your trauma, and that trauma is real. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But like the Bible just blatantly doesn't make excuses for it. It's like, do not live in a spirit of fear. Do not worry. Do not. It's a command. It's not a, hey, if it's easy, don't do this. It's like, it's a command to not live in fear. Obviously, like we're fallen, but it's just an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah. And I'll link this in the show notes, but the most recent, and I actually, like, I do love John Mark, but I don't listen to him super, super often, like his podcasts. I love his books. I do love his podcasts too. And the most recent one is called Being a Non-Anxious Presence. And I'll link it in the show notes, and you guys need to listen to this. It was like, it just completely like spoke to what I was feeling like at the time. And to your point, something that he brought up in this podcast was perfect love casts out fear. Yeah. And like living in that, as well as, and what I just said earlier of like, we do what we can to live a good life. But we live in the tension of how futile like life can be. And John Mark throughout this message talks about Peter walking on the water, and kind of reading into that context and like what that interaction personally was actually like between Peter and Jesus, where it wasn't like a mean, like, oh, you have little faith. It was more like childish and like playful and like more lighthearted. Like when Peter starts to sink, because the reality is like, Peter didn't say like, Lord, like promise me that I'll make it to you and then I'll step out of the boat and then I'll walk on water. Like he didn't have all these stipulations. It was like,
he just went,
tell me to come and I'll come and I'll go. Like that was essentially like all Peter needed to, and he was like, essentially like, and if I perish, I perish.
And Jesus was like, bet bro.
Yeah. And it was like, that takes an absurdly like deep, mature, like level of faith. Like you know what I mean? Like it's really cool to like see that story in like a different light. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that trust.
Yeah. And it's so easy to like twist that. 'Cause even a lot of our fear comes from love, which is like, you know, even just thinking about like protection or worry over people because you love them.
Right.
Like you think about, you know, a lot of thinking about potentially being a parent someday and like how scary that is because you're worried about everything that could possibly go wrong. Like this your friend, he's got 5 kids at home and a pregnant wife who's in a car accident. Like, I think he was worrying a little bit, like I would be. And he should be to a degree because he loves them. Right. It's just such a fine balance between like a trust in the Lord as their protector as well. And like a, you know, healthy understanding of like what you can or can't do. And then, like you said, being a non-anxious presence. And honestly, like in any of these situations, like, fear and worry don't ever really serve a purpose. Right. Like your check engine light goes off, like getting nervous and swerving isn't going to help. Right. Like calmly pulling into the McDonald's parking lot and then sorting it out. And then that's contagious too. Like, you know, there's been a couple times that things have gone wrong with Amanda and I, and like, if I was starting to get worked up, then maybe it'll rub off on her and then she'll get worked up and then we're both worked up versus just
plays
like
off each other.
Yeah. Like remaining calm, thinking and doing what you can. And then, we had to kind of come to terms with that in the airport a little bit. We're like, oh my gosh, we're in Salt Lake City. We're about to fly into a random city in Montana. What are we doing? Why did we do this? Like, and then there was a moment I honestly, like, we were about to go to the Delta help desk and I had a moment of like, I don't know. I haven't prayed about this yet. And I was like, I was thinking to, and I didn't even talk to Amanda about this. It was just in my innermost thoughts. And I was like, Lord, you're in control of literally everything. So I know you have a plan in this. So I'll just trust that. I have no idea what the solution is right now. I'm going to keep working to figure it out. But I've been trying to figure it out with my own brain, which you gave me, and that's good, but without any consideration for what you've got going on for us today. And oh my gosh, we were both sleep deprived and grumpy and annoyed
and trying to make heavy decisions under that load is challenging.
But it was so, I mean, and it's not a magic formula, but it was almost as if when I surrendered to the craziness, like when you surrender to the cold of the river and you just go, you know what, it's going to be cold. And I'll be okay. And that was when like we got our flight switched right after that. So it's just like a little bit of the Lord. Again, these are small things, guys, but, that's what like the walk is about. It's not about, you know.
Well, I was going to say too, like I'm looking forward at like what is, and not to like read super far into it, but like what is the Lord teaching me through this already? Like we've kind of already talked about that of like living in the tension, mitigating fear with reliance on the Lord, and not to completely get rid of it. I mean, maybe that'd be amazing, but I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing either, because the contrast of that, like getting nervous before something can actually put more intentionality on you honing in. If it debilitates you, that's where it's like, okay, that's kind of an issue. But
do you think Jesus was afraid before going to the cross? I think he was.
Oh yeah.
But he so trusted his Father.
And the other thing that John Mark talks about in that is Jesus calming the storm. And, you know, trusting in someone that one of John Mark's lines in his podcast is like, we think we can control everything. We can't even control the weather. And it's just like, kind of like as a reminder to like puts us in our place, you know?
Yeah. Even like planning film shoots or business or like hiking and stuff. It's like, if it's storming, what are we going to do, man?
Rain check.
That was one thing. Jumping back to the Montana thing, we were on our way back on our first day from our, you know, we did 15 miles our first day. It was like the last mile and we were all exhausted. And, we knew there was a slight chance of like weather, but it was pretty small and the sky seemed clear, but you know, you're in the mountains. And we're about a mile out and just, we're like, we better hurry because that sounded close and loud. And we're like half jogging at this point. and it starts just downpouring. We see it come across the lake that we're hiking next to.
You see the drops.
And you saw it just coming towards us. We're like, oh no. Just because these big fat drops, like not little. It was like ones that you would feel splat on your neck or your forehead, you know, as you're going. Quickly turned to hail. So
whoa.
Yeah. So it was like,
oh my gosh,
these big fat drops that kept getting bigger and harder, and we're like, oh shoot, is it hailing now? And we barely, like, we make it that last little bit, and we barely make it underneath like an awning at the hotel that was right on the lake that we were trying to get back to. And hail, like the size of like large peas, just starts literally like gushing from the sky.
Whoa.
And we're just looking up, like, we were almost caught out in that. And like, I was just reminded about like how small you feel, so small out there. You're like, that took me. You look out at the mountain, and you're like, oh, I bet like I could see. You couldn't even see yourself looking at that mountain. Like if you were standing on that mountain, no one would know, like, because you're so small. Yeah. And you feel like you can see all those details. It was just a reminder again of like that's such a good reminder. We can't control the weather. Right. Like you're at the mercy of the elements 99% of your life. Like we get so used to jumping in our what's the word that John Foreman uses? Our Lexus cages. And going to work every day and braving the weather and having AC and heat and all these things that we lose sight of our smallness and our, you know, like taking a day off because of the weather. Right. Like, whereas like there's no days off now because.
Well, and that's again, like that's what this sermon John Mark touches on is, it's our sense of control. Like electricity, like coffee, like we want to control our energy levels. We want to control our work hours and our work schedule and things like that, which then bleeds into elimination of hurry and like all of that stuff.
Yeah. How can you be a non-anxious person when you're trying to control?
Right. Exactly.
Because control only leads to anxiety.
Right. Right. Because ultimately we aren't in control and therefore something is going to happen that is out of our control. Like it's almost inevitable.
that also spills into like, we've been talking a lot about patience too. And like obviously all these things are connected, but I think a patient mindset is a non-anxious mindset as well. Right? Like patience to stand in line and wait for something and be content to be where you are. Yeah. And not be like, oh my gosh, the person in front of me in the grocery line like didn't get any of their stuff ready and like for no reason. Like it's a Saturday afternoon or whatever. And you're like you're like trying to speed home for no reason versus just enjoying where you are and stuff.
I was actually, even on my drive here this morning, 131 is backed up because there's a lane closure right here on Leonard, and it was starting to get backed up back by Fifth Third Ballpark, and that's like a couple miles. And I was like, what the freak? Like, why? It's like, I've had so many drives on 131, which I thank the Lord that I don't have like the typical 8 a.m., 7 a.m., and then 5 p.m. commute to deal with all of that, because that would be another teaching moment. But like, I was like, I don't need to like rush and get super pissed at like people that none of this is in their control either. Like maybe there could be better drivers on the road, but like that's not in my control. So why would I like tailgate someone and get super upset? Yeah. And it like, I just created such a gap in like a space where I was just like, I was basically just driving at like 5 miles an hour constantly. But I was like, there's no sense in rushing.
Stop and go.
Yeah. Like then it's, my brain goes to like, I don't want to wear my brakes out, or like what, like people speed up and then slam on their brakes and then speed up. And then it's like, that's like kind of hard in your car.
That's a lease.
But like sitting in that, and like, we don't ever start on time here. So I was like, we're not gonna like and it's also like not even like a business client thing. So it's like, why am I? And then I actually just drove here with the radio off to just like pray and sit in silence. And I was like, oh, I actually have more time to do that now, you know? And that like set that time up even more so to be positive, instead of I'm so angry because I'm out of control, like in this situation, you know?
Do you know, I also think, as I think about the idea of anxiety and patience, it's not just something that, yes, it's something that you should practice in all circumstances, but it's something that you need to cultivate and incorporate intentionally. And you need to make space in your life so that you genuinely aren't being irresponsible by being patient or by being non-anxious. For instance, if you're working 3 jobs and you only have 10 minutes of a break in between your jobs and there's traffic, how patient are you going to be? Like, realistically, you have somewhere to be, you got to get there.
Right.
Everybody has different circumstances, and if you need to work 3 jobs in a season, do it. But I'm a workaholic. And so what am I doing in my life out of greed or out of like the idea of being more successful that's making me worse?
Selfish motives
that's making me a worse person. That's making me anxious or making it so that I can't be patient because I can't afford to. And then everything's an inconvenience, right? It's like, so it's not just something that like, I think you can wake up and just decide in your, like you, to a degree, yes, you can try to incorporate that to a small sense. But if you want to live a life that is characterized by patience, one thing that I talked to you about Saturday night, we had a little off the air podcast at my place after we were rehearsing for some upcoming shows.
It was like a pregame.
I told you, I was like, we were talking about the fruit of the Spirit, and then also, is it 1 Corinthians, talking about love is patient and love is kind.
Galatians 5, 1 Corinthians 13.
And I had a moment where I was like, I remember thinking to myself, like, how often am I not patient with Amanda? Whereas like, if I could be remembered by like a small amount of things by her, like patience would be one that I would really want to be remembered by. Not only her, but everybody in my life.
Right.
And so like, what's more important, like my ability to make a few extra $1,000s a year or to be known as a patient man? Like there are things that can't be bought.
Right.
Right.
It's character stuff.
Yeah. So I don't know. I get sidetracked by work, and work's good. I get sidetracked by achievement. I get sidetracked by
like it's careerism. Yeah,
exactly. And I'm not the only one, guys. We live in America, and career is elevated over basically anything else. It's the new religion. It's the new god of America.
Okay, so this is really interesting. And again, this is from John Mark's podcast. These are not my words, but this is very, very interesting. And this is like a heavy subject, and I don't have a background to actually step into knowing a lot about this. So I'm just prefacing that. But John Mark talks about kind of that idea of control is largely like a Western thing. Like it is across the world. But he specifically brought up, because he knows he has like a close friend. He talks about it. Go listen to it. He has a close friend that struggles with like anorexia and eating disorder. And John Mark talked about it in the message, how that specific, like anorexia and eating disorder, that's like basically only a Western culture thing.
A lot of mental illness actually is.
Yeah. You like with this, like eating disorders, like that is a Western thing, and you almost never see it in any other culture across the world. And I was like, whoa, because it's our sense of control and managing. And,
there was I think I saw this on Joe Rogan, a short from Joe Rogan podcast. There was a guy who, how he has all those like crazy, like find rare animal dudes on the podcast. There was one guy that was talking about, I think he was like deep in South America, to like a tribe that literally is so remote that he was the first like white person they've ever seen.
Yeah.
And he met this man who was just like very good looking, and he was like, wow, you're like really good looking. Like I could get you a modeling job back in LA or whatever where I live, and you can make a ton of money, and like you would just be a hit right away because like you're just so good looking. And the guy's like, wait, is that the land where people kill themselves? Why would I want to go there?
Yeah.
And these are people that like literally run for miles a day just to get their food, and like
yeah,
this, like
crazy.
Yeah, climbing they were climbing trees of like killer bees and like get the honey and stuff, like
yeah,
crazy, like to our standards, like crazy hard life.
right.
And he's like, wait, why would I want to be? He's like, I'm happy.
Yeah,
Why would I want to go somewhere that like people kill themselves? Like that would be a terrible place to live.
Right.
Isn't that so
that's
interesting?
insane. Oh yeah, it's definitely interesting, and I mean it makes sense.
I guess when you're so worried about like staying alive, like the last thought you have in your brain is like killing yourself.
Yeah. Well, and it's also like I have some really close like spiritual friend and like mentor in my life, and he's done like pretty well for himself. Not super well, but like not like rich,
Comfortable,
loaded.
yeah. Upper middle class.
Yeah, yeah. And like so, and I've worked with him a lot through landscaping and different things, and he always would, like, when something inconvenient happens or like our loader breaks, or like even like they had a Chris Craft boat for a while. It was like old. It was kind of vintage. It was almost like your van in like boat form. It was pretty sweet. And I would wash it and stuff like that. And he would just be like trying to figure out these like parts that are so old and they don't make them any, or like whatever.
Yeah,
and
I totally feel that.
What he would say is just like first world problems. And it's true. Like it's kind of like a nonchalant thing, like in the moment, but the reality is like, my check engine light is a first world problem. Like when you look at the stats of like who owns a car, like it's kind of, really puts you in your place.
The fact that you can travel hundreds of miles,
2 hours
of like
to make money, to be profitable with gear that costs a crap ton of money. And like it just all comes back and you're like, okay.
This is why I'm such a, I feel like I've said this before, but like, I think we're so out of touch with who we were created as in terms of like how we interact with nature, because we're so prosperous, at least in the West.
Yeah.
That we can't comprehend, how fortunate we are. We just take so many things for granted. So like, it's almost like I feel like everybody should have, like, even if you don't like being outside, like,
come on,
I don't know. Like, I feel like it's almost necessary to a degree to like push yourself in that way, to be uncomfortable, to like even sleep outside.
I have language for this. So
go for it.
Shout out to Matt in my Tuesday men's Bible study with Keith. Go check out Keith's episode. That was 2 episodes ago. Matt actually brought that up because I forget what we were talking about in context, we're actually going through the Elimination of Hurry like study on Right Now Media. They have like sermon series and videos made by John Mark that look pretty gorgeous, if I do say so myself.
Yeah.
But just talking about silence and solitude was the practice that we were debriefing, and Matt, like the video kind of talked about getting in nature and going on walks. And Matt brought up a really interesting point that I had never really thought about to this level, is that when we get out in nature, it is, I forget exactly his language, but essentially it was like, nature is the closest thing that we have to a pure form of God that hasn't been like touched or ruined or like destroyed by, air quotes, destroyed by man. Of like when I go out on a walk and there's just trees and like it doesn't even have to be anything grand.
They declare the glory of God. Yeah.
And it's because we don't have our hand in them necessarily. Like
no man caused these trees to grow how they grow. They just do because God did.
We might have picked the spot or like intentionally planted some, and not even everything, but like they're there and they like resemble the glory of God all on their own.
Even as much as you plan, like keep a garden, even as much as you plan for things to grow, like things you didn't want to grow really well. Yes. And the things you want to grow like aren't growing. You're like, what's going on?
Yes. Yeah. But I had never like thought about it to that level of like, this is unobstructed, like untouched by our thumbprint, and it's just God's thumbprint around us. So when we subject ourselves to that environment, we start to become more like that environment.
Yeah, like walking through Glacier. There are grizzly bears. We saw a grizzly bear.
Hey, I saw a bear at Josiah and Lacey's wedding.
A black bear?
I'll show you the video after.
Yeah, it's insane. there was a grizzly bear on the mountain. You are not at the top of the food chain out there. There are moose. We saw a moose 20 yards away from us.
Deadly.
Which are even scarier than grizzly bears.
Yeah.
So you're hiking in this absolutely gorgeous place with these breathtaking views. The back of your mind going, hey bear.
Hey bear.
Like, you know, you're like thinking like, I'm not totally safe out here. Same thing with sleeping outside. Like you might not get the best night of sleep. You might hear noises at night. You might realize how vulnerable you are. And then the next night while you're in your own bed, you're going to sleep like a rock and you're going to be grateful for it.
Yeah.
Again, it's like all that perspective of like, yeah, you have a 1-bedroom apartment in this one place of town and you wish you had this.
And it's by the train tracks.
And
it's noisy.
And it constantly wakes you up and all these things. Yeah. But you have a house that's temperature controlled and a mattress.
Yeah.
A place to lay your head.
And a refrigerator.
And food to eat. Life's pretty good.
Yeah.
So it's just all that perspective.
Yes, absolutely.
That, again, with the whole theme of this kind of season is in the contentment and stuff, it all plays together.
Yeah, it does.
When you're content, you're patient. When you're patient, you're content.
And
when all those things, it's hard to be anxious.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the other piece of this is hurry, because are you taking time and allowing space to be convicted about your patience, to be convicted about your anxiety, you know,
or to even like go on a walk or a hike. Like it takes like to go 3 miles, it takes you an hour and a half versus getting in your car and doing 3 miles in 3 minutes.
Yes, absolutely.
It's not about destination.
Right. And I think, I had a thought and it kind of disappeared. No, it's okay. But yeah, like, it's back.
Hello, thought.
Hello. Welcome back. Welcome back. Come sit. It takes intentionality to rest, and rest is not, and we've maybe said this before, but I do want to reiterate this because I'm learning this, is that rest is not mental brain checkout. Like it actually takes willpower and brain power to do that, where like we think of rest as just completely turning our brain off.
To say no to things too.
And while turning your brain off and just vegging out and watching The Office can be great, I would argue it's not true rest. You're not allowing your soul to catch up with your present body.
It's a distraction.
Yeah. So knowing that, how do we practice Sabbath? You know, going into, and it's different for everyone, but Sabbath is not lay around and like turn your brain off and watch Netflix. It's like, no, like for me, it's planning where I want to go for a walk and actually going and being intentional with my thoughts on the walk, you know,
and making that time set apart,
right,
and holy,
and holding to that. Like if I put it in there and something kind of fun comes up,
a shoe or like even work, man,
absolutely.
Like,
it's holding to that. Can
we do that next week?
Yeah. Setting boundaries for yourself and therefore like others in your life. And so like let that be more of an encouragement to y'all of like, like if you want to practice Sabbath or if you want to rest and listen, like, you know, the Holy Spirit speaks in a quiet, like soft voice, like get alone. Like there's a reason that silence and solitude are a part of the spiritual disciplines and why we see Jesus practice them. You know, Jesus waited 33 years to start his earthly ministry, did the Sermon on the Mount, and then went 40 days in the wilderness right after that. Like it wasn't like, okay, 33 years and it's go time and it's green light.
And he's got a tour every night.
Boom, boom. Yeah.
Tour day.
And it's a North American 1975 tour. And, no, it's intentionality and it's the speed and it's, what is that? I got to find a verse. It's the Matthew 11:28. But it's, the way that the Message translation, it's just beautiful. Let me see if I can. We're almost there. Matthew 11:28. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. And then this is my favorite line: learn the unforced rhythms of grace. Don't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. And even that is something I've been thinking about. John 10:10 of he has come to bring you life and life to the full. And like, I don't think life to the full is pitted with fear and anxiety and stress. I think those are all markers, and I think that those can be turned around and be good signposts, but to work at not letting them run your life and letting Jesus still run your life and learning the unforced rhythms of grace. I think that is more so life to the full, you know.
I agree.
But
I agree.
With that,
thank you all. Thank you for your patience and grace with us and joining us on this walk. As we ponder these things in our hearts, we hope that they're beneficial for you guys.
It is a walk.
That's why we do this, is to hopefully start the conversation and maybe spur some thoughts in your soul. And we're excited for how that's working out for you guys. So thank you as well to Josh at Local Legend, as always, for letting us record here. This awesome space.
Go check out Quickwater in Rockford, Michigan. Really awesome spot down there by the river. Quickwater because coffee is the water that makes you quick. But also they're right by the river. Steven, go say hi to Steven. Tell him we sent you. You won't get anything, but just tell him we sent you. He's awesome.
He'll make you a great cup of coffee regardless.
He'll make you
go put extra love in for you.
Go get a cortado. He'll kiss it.
No, that's a violation.
Yeah,
some
that's
sort.
the health code. Yeah. They air roast everything, and so the beans and the coffee that they produce is really, really nice, and it's not overburnt like a drum roaster or anything.
Very good.
It's really good. It's really clean and bright, and they're constantly coming out. They had a couple one-off roasts. There was like a limited edition Rwanda that was super good.
And they're a true like local coffee shop. Like Steven's roasting like once. Is he doing once a week still? Like
I think so. Yeah.
It's like Mondays.
It's right in the shop.
Yeah.
Like
he's literally, you go in on a Monday and he's there roasting. So like you, if you're looking for a place to really build some community and invest in, it's a local company that's doing awesome things. It's run by great people.
It is. And he's doing some big things. He also, for those of you that like to partake, he does have his liquor license and has like really interesting, some really cool mixed drinks. He has like some bottles of wine there that you can buy and stuff. And they're open pretty late too. So if you want like an afternoon drink, head over there. It's a really cool spot, really welcoming.
Amazing. Thank you, Cole.
Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you guys. Do we have a record time?
Oh, sugar beans.
What are you spinning? I'm spinning the same crap I always spin right now.
I am too. I don't know. I think I already talked about it, but I have actually been listening to that unreleased music from Daft Punk that they just came out. Their Random Access Memories 10th anniversary edition. There's some sweet, very, very interesting tracks on there. They have a track that's making of the song Fragments of Time on their record, and it's literally like 7 minutes of Julian Casablancas and the guys in the studio talking about writing the lyrics to the song. And it's just like, it's almost like a vlog, like an audio vlog. It's really cool. And it's like how they come up with like the main hook of the, and like some of the verses and stuff.
Awesome.
And it's like really sweet. So just some interesting stuff, but that, and then because I'm going to see the 75, I've been listening to a lot of that.
Check out Circle East.
Hey,
we have a show. This is probably going to be before the show, right? Then it releases.
Not this one. Not before Brad's show.
Frick. Well,
because
2 weeks, 14 days, 24th. Be the week after.
Yep.
Well, you won't be hearing this before our show, the 22nd of July at the Pyramid Scheme with Brad Sinclair.
Yeah.
But we have another show in Holland, August 31st, with Megan Stark, who has an episode. So it's just been awesome to kind of break out our music again and rediscover what that looks like for us. So
we got some stuff on the way.
It's cooking, man. I'm excited about it. You know, just rediscovering these songs and getting excited about, you know, the art there. So yeah.
Come out to the show, buy a shirt.
Oh yeah. Cole and my sister have been working on some designs.
It's been sick. Anna has crushed it.
Yeah. Completely. And we're hoping to have some really classic, sick graphic tees for you.
It's going to be a vibe.
Yeah.
Josh is going to be here in August.
Yes.
Come for Josh.
Joshy D.
If you don't come for anything else, just come for Josh.
Come for Joshy.
Come for Josh. Say hi. Listen to our music.
Okay, all my coffee's gone.
Yep.
It's been gone. Later.
Later, skaters.